you're building GTM for European SaaS companies trying to scale globally. There's a very specific kind of pressure that comes with that, where the product is ready, but the market isn't quite yet. What do you do in that moment where most consultants wouldn't?
Art, but there is something that I always pay attention to, and things that I observed over the past 14 years of working as PMM and with B2B SaaS companies in Europe. And I usually worked with scale ups. And there is one particular thing that I noticed at this growth stage that influenced how I work with companies. And this thing is that so at the beginning, companies really try to achieve product market fit, and they do. And then they go into scale up phase. And I
Hmm.
noticed that they try to sometimes go into too many directions in with a goal to achieve the scale, with a goal to grow bigger. And this is when different parts of the business start getting disconnected. So that influenced how I work with companies, which is they usually come with very specific issue. So they come and say, "Oh, our product launches don't work. Like our product team is working so hard, and then it's like a conveyor belt, and everything is just falling on the floor because there is no one to pick it up." So this is like a symptom, usually. Or they say, "Our sales team is not ready to talk about the product. Like they don't have enough information soon enough. Enablement is not working." But then again, it's just a symptom. So what I do, I usually run what I like to call go-to-market gap analysis, looking at the full go-to-market process, which for me is from the very beginning of the product development process, the idea even, then going through all the stages of marketing, selling, retention, loyalty, hopefully not churn, but we get there too, of course, as well. And then when I'm looking at the full story, I'm able to find the gaps that the companies couldn't find themselves. So then turns out that the fact that there is no cohesive product launch process and like this feeling that nobody's picking that up actually started with the fact that the product strategy is not clear. Like nobody knows why we're building this and why now, what we should expect. So then it's really much harder to build a roadmap because it's just collection of sometimes it could feel like random topics from different PMs versus one coherent product strategy. So I would say that sometimes the perception is that the market is not buying yet,
Right.
but and the product is ready, but maybe because all these disconnections, it's the case that it is not really ready. I mean, you don't have enough connections with your customers. Maybe your roadmap is built solely on sales requests, and sales is going after different segments, and they are going after the different ICPs. So it's really hard to go to achieve this product market fit again at scale. And it's different. Like at the beginning, they try to find one use case, for example, one industry, and they succeed. And they're like, okay, so we can repeat that. But as the company grows, the scale of issues, disconnections also grows. And I think that that's the main thing that especially scale ups need to understand, that you cannot look only at one side of the story. It's never the case that something is only broken in marketing or something is only broken in sales or only in product. It's everywhere a little bit. And then you need to fix all the gaps. You cannot just, if you fix the gap in the product, but you don't fix it in the marketing or sales, it's still not going to work. So that's why my approach is to treat it as one big go-to-market team versus we have some problem with sales, we have some problem with product. Well, you have problem with your go-to-market, and you better treat it as a whole without any witch hunt, like some blessing game, blaming each other, but just try to focus on how we can find a solution that works for the business, not for the each department. And I think that's the key difference.
Right. I think working in silos is a major problem right now, which many industries are facing, many companies are facing. And like how rightly you pointed out that everyone has to work in a team as a team, not individually, basically.
Yes.
Yeah. So, fractional PMM is still widely misunderstood. Companies think that they need a consultant, but what they actually need is very different. So, how do you walk into a company and change that perception from day one that, this is not how it's supposed to be?
Yeah, I've been thinking like when we talk about go to market and then fractional, and that both of these terms have many definitions. I mean, if you ask 5 different people from 5 different industries, companies, what is go to market? What is fractional? And they will give you 5 different definitions. So that started causing confusion. Um, that made me even stop using these both of these terms. Like I felt like, okay, I spend more time explaining to people what it actually means
Hmm.
than talking about the proper topics. So then I was like, okay, let's get it out of the way and we can focus on what is your problem, how I can help you. But what you said, like there's a difference between consultant approach and a fractional approach. So I'm going more into the direction of explaining the difference between the two. And then it's like, pick what you need, basically, because I can do both. So from my perspective, when you have a very particular project to work on, for instance, you have a big product launch and you need somebody who has this specific experience leading this kind of projects, but you don't have an experienced team already at your organization, and you need someone that will kind of speed them up in the process so they don't have to learn the hard way, but there will be someone who comes and tells them, okay, so here's the template, he's like, do this like that. They can advise them, they can kind of like lead them through it with the goal that we will finish this project, they will be ready to repeat something like that again on their own without a consultant being there. And then the consultant is probably going to another project, very similar one, because that's usually how it works, especially in product marketing, that
Hmm.
product marketing consultants specialize in some specific thing. So that's the main difference for me. And for fractional, for me, it's like more long-term collaboration when I'm embedded in the team. And usually there is no one senior enough to lead the team if I wasn't there, which means that working solely in a consultant role, just guiding the people wouldn't be enough because they are not trained enough, experienced enough. They don't have the proper leadership yet to succeed. So it would be like, helping them on the way, but it, it wouldn't have long-term result because the moment you disappear, they wouldn't have enough resources, knowledge, leadership to go without you. So in this approach, I said, I'm with you as long as you need me. But in this respect that I see the issues, like I tell you, like, these are the issues that I see. I have my go-to-market gap analysis. I see that, for instance, we need to build a team. So my goal is to build a team that we know that at some point in the future, I won't be in the picture. That this team will have to be self-sufficient, independent, but it will be already built in the way and it will be going with me for long enough that they perfectly know how to do it. And I feel comfortable leaving them knowing that they will know what to do and they won't feel lost. And something that is common for me for being a consultant and fractional is this end goal that this collaboration will end at some point. And the goal is that after I leave, the situation at the company is better than it was when I was starting with you, and that you are completely ready to go on your own. It's like, sending your child when they're grown ups
Yeah.
to the world. When you realize that you don't raise your child for yourself, but you raise your child so they're independent at some point. This is exactly the approach I have with teams. So I'm raising you for as long as you need, but at some point you will be grown up enough to do it on your own. And that's the key that I would maybe use if I was a CEO of a company, a CMO at some company, and I saw that, okay, maybe our gap is that we don't have product marketing function. So I would ask myself, okay, but do we have a product marketing leader that would be good enough to lead this function, but maybe they need some extra support. They need some like cheat codes, as I like to call it, like somebody who's already done it, and they can come and just help them along the way, be maybe like a mentor a little bit. And then having a consultant or advisor is a really good idea, and that will work well. But in the scenario where maybe we have a few people that could be a good fit for product marketers, they don't have the actual product marketing experience yet. We don't have an experienced leader. It would be someone who would have to do it for the first time ever, and it could be overwhelming. So instead of learning the hard way, the easier way is to hire a fractional product marketing director, manager, lead, and help them pave the way for the team so they don't have to. That's what I wish I had in place when I was the first time head of product marketing. That I wish that back then I had someone who could be my like soundboard, who I could go to and ask for help, ask for advice.
Right.
I think that that's something that can really set product marketing function for success.
I really love the way you answered this because it's more about having that empathetic mindset as well, that I have faced this, so I don't want this to continue. So this was an amazing approach that you have. So you've launched products across different markets, different cultures, different buying behaviors. So what's the thing about European buyers that most American GTM playbooks completely miss out?
That's such an interesting question, especially about European market, because the main thing that many companies outside of Europe miss is that there is no such thing as European market, meaning that Europe is consisting of collection of many countries with different cultures, different languages. So there is no such thing as one European market. And from this perspective, if a company, especially also depending on the industry, but for instance, now I'm working mainly with supply chain management, logistics industry. And in this industry, every market is totally different. And every market has a different language. If you want to scale in Europe, it means that you have to scale in the smaller markets and achieve critical mass in order to have some leadership in your industry in Europe. So it requires more time and effort. You need to hire more people, most probably. And I know that you can translate many things with AI. You can have voiceovers with AI, and it is there, but the quality is not the same. And it's totally different when you have someone local that can build relations for you, and English is not always enough. And I think that's also an important thing to remember. So this local approach to go global is very important, and it's totally different than running business, for example, in the American market, where at the beginning you have to use one language. And in Europe, you can go up to, for instance, 17 languages, depending on, the countries that you will see are your primary markets. But the scale is totally different from the efforts point of view. And then if you start looking into cultural differences, like localization, that translation and localization is not the same. Like you can translate with AI, you can translate with Google Translate, but you cannot localize with these tools. And that's a key to achieving success in European markets from my perspective, that it doesn't feel translated, it feels localized. So specifically the issues of these countries. Like there are different law regulations, even though
Yes.
European Union tries to have some standard, but then still like every country is an independent country. So they are allowed to have their specific regulations, and then you need to become an expert on regulations in 16 countries, for instance. Then you need to monitor insights in 15 languages. So it's totally, totally different environment. And then like when you hire people, then you also need to pay more attention to language skills, for instance, and to these cultural differences. And that also comes with a challenge of having this multicultural organization, where on one hand, it's more creative from my perspective, there are better ideas, and it can bring better results, but it's also harder to lead a team where you try to have some standard. And for example, we have an agreement that we all communicate in English because we all have different languages. But at the same time, English is not a native language of 90% of the people that will be in the room. So sometimes misunderstandings also come from the sole fact that it is not their native language. Everybody can have a little bit different understanding of what you just said. And the same goes for customers. So I think that this is a like very tricky and interesting challenge that requires a lot of understanding and attention. And once you understand that and you see that maybe it doesn't make sense to go after 15 countries, and maybe in your case, your best customers are in like 3-4 key countries, and that's what you should focus on. So you don't spend money, on maintaining 15 landing pages, but you can have just only 6 instead of 1 in English. I think that's a challenge that we can have in Europe.
Localization is the key because if Alex, I can give my own example. I was going on my Europe trip and I was going to cover Switzerland, Germany, and all of these things. So I just started learning German for a month, and I saw the difference, like talking in English and communicating in German, like keywords, Wasser and water, and all of that. So I can completely get it because if you don't know the language, it's very difficult at one point.
Yeah, and in product marketing, we talk a lot about talking in the language of the customer.
Yes.
And obviously, we refer to knowing their pain points, the value, the language they're actually using when they're talking about the work. But at the same time, the language in the literal meaning is also very important here, because there are different terms in different languages that are used in a little bit different way, and something that is an issue in one country is not an issue in another. So if you in the communication, you also need to.
So you spoke about AI. That brings me to my next question. That every PMM team right now is being asked to do more with AI. Like, but there's a difference between using AI to go faster and using it to actually think better. So where do you think most of the PMMs are getting that wrong?
That's a topic that I have a little bit FOMO about. I mean, everywhere I see people using AI in many different ways, especially in PMM community. I see so many interesting use cases, and I try to find out what works best for me, because I have this feeling that you cannot test every possible scenario and not everything will work for you. So I try to use common sense. So as I was saying, that sometimes you spend more time on setting up some workflow or setting up some prompt versus the amount of time it would actually take you if you've done it yourself. So that's something that is frustrating for me sometimes, and also the case that I don't want to lose the skill of critical thinking. I don't want to lose skill of writing. I still want to be able to do it. And as my friend says often that you shouldn't skip your brain day. Like people talk about going to the gym and not skipping the leg day, so you shouldn't skip your brain day. And I think that that's the biggest issue that I see, the risk that people are skipping brain day when they are using AI. And like gradually they see that, oh, it doesn't make sense to do it on my own because I can just ask Claude to do it for me. But maybe long term, you still want to have the skill. So maybe you should do it on your own. On the other hand, I really love outsourcing to AI things that I would have to do manually that would take me a lot of time, but it doesn't really give me more value. It doesn't increase my skills if I did it myself. So, for instance, if I already collect some data information, I just need to organize it in some document to do some analysis of already collected information, then I will outsource it to AI. But I don't want to outsource the thinking process itself. Like I sometimes treat it as my sparring partner. So I'm like, okay, so I have this and that idea, challenge me, for instance. Or like if we were to do this with that, like what would you do? So to have some like kind of brainstorming session. So like already, but I always give them some information. It's not like I'm just opening chat window and like, okay, now based on whatever you find in the internet, given this business strategy or like positioning strategy, but I do my homework. I have my business information, I have my research, and then I structure it a little bit in the way that I would do it with this line of thinking that I want to apply. And then I ask AI to help me. So I make sure I don't skip the brain day. And also another risk that I see is that if we all outsource, I don't know, content creation to AI, strategy creation, then we'll be living in the world of sameness. And that's so counterintuitive, and that's totally not what we want in product marketing, because we keep talking about differentiated value and how this value can be differentiated if it's all coming from the same source. Like it will be all the same. And we can see that today, even on LinkedIn. I love these posts when people take screenshots of AI generated posts that are more or less the same or sometimes really exactly the same. And this is so sad because this is also now not why I go to LinkedIn. Like I want to know what people think. I want to have the original thoughts from their brains, not some AI generated slope, because I can generate that myself. So I also perceive it as even lack of respect to other people that are supposed to read your content, to your customers. Like if you just throw at them a lot of very generic, low quality content because you want it to go fast, maybe going fast is not the best strategy here. I feel like, you know, having attention where, like, putting your attention to quality and to knowing that this will resonate versus trying to just do a lot of things fast is a better strategy.
This is something, yeah, this is something so amazing actually. So yeah, I completely understand what you're trying to say, and really loved your take on this. That don't skip your brain day. I think that would be my quote for the week actually. While you were talking, I was like, okay, this can be the title, don't skip your brain day. So I had an amazing chat session with you. It was so awesome to hear your perspective. It was, I feel, completely different, a very different perspective basically on so many things and so many takes that you have. Thank you so much for being a part of it.